Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's audibletrial.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. That's betterhelp.com/Nerdery and Murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Was this guy a genius who saw how things were coming? Or was he just a guy trying to make some money? I think he may have been a little bit of both.
Static crackles, dream state, nerdery and murdery fade. Voices in the wire, two dudes light the fire. Obsession and confession, games and death procession. Through the microphone they speak, dark secrets geeks seek. twist learned. Oh, nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill. The mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills.
Welcome to episode 206 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 206 with your nerdery.
I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the up and down, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. We've talked about this from time to time, and I just had to mention, you listeners, you're never going to see this and you're never going to hear it, but I just have to laugh because the daily chat between Zig and our producer Will and myself are nothing more than a daily, how much can one person kick the other in the balls? It's really what it is. It is just nothing but bullshit and sometimes shock value to see, I will admit mainly for me to see who can shock the most. But it was very funny this week, just as we chat all week long, and literally just kick each other to hell, is just hysterical. So I had to share that. Head back to Nashville this week. Be gone for a week. I'm excited to get out of this heat down here for a little bit. Friday and Saturday, the actual temp was 94 and 95. The feels like temp was 107 and 108. It was gross. It was
humid.
oppressive.
It was humid up here like yesterday. It was like, oh God. Ugh.
It was oppressive. My friends and I went out and played golf yesterday, and it was just oppressive. Came over to the house afterwards and to jump in the pool, and oh my God, did that water feel so good. The water, I mean, it's been hot enough. The little floating thermostat in our pool said the temp in the pool was like 88.
Oh my God.
You know,
It's almost a hot tub.
Yeah, very much bathtub water at that point, but man, it's just
better than 107.
It's going to be an oppressive summer, I think.
This is like 1980 or 1999.
Maybe. Oh, not looking forward to that heat this year. I did want to give a shout out to our listener Chuck, who we've mentioned many, many times. He became a grandfather this week.
Congratulations,
so
Chuck.
Congrats to Chuck. I know he's a very proud grandpa. Saw him just before the birth the other day, and he was just all on edge because they were waiting. The mother, had got to the hospital, was just in labor and waiting. So the big waiting game. But big shout out to Chuck. I know he's a really, really, really proud grandpa. So, anywho, that's all I have. Do you got anything else? Are you ready to step over?
Congratulations, Cookie.
Oh, to Cookie too. Yeah, there we go. Because she's a grandma now.
That's right. Cookie's a grandma.
You got anything else, or you want to step over to the nerdery side of the house?
I kind of want to step over to the nerdery side of the house. I'm kind of excited. Today we're going to talk about Herschell Gordon Lewis. Again, I don't want to say he's a controversial figure, but he's a weird figure in the movie industry, and it's weird how he even got involved in it. So I kind of wanted to talk about that.
Okay.
So Herschell Gordon Lewis was an American filmmaker best known for creating the splatter subgenre of horror films. He is often called the godfather of gore, a title also given to Lucio Fulci, who we've discussed before. Through his film career, including works in a range of exploitation film genres, including juvenile delinquents films, nudie cuties, 2 children's films, and at least 1 rural comedy. Lewis' career all movie wrote. With his better-known gore films, Herschell Gordon Lewis was a pioneer going further than anyone else dared, probing the depths of disgust and discomfort on screen with more bad taste and imagination than anyone of his era. Joe Bob Briggs was a large proponent of Herschell Gordon Lewis back in the 80s and the 90s. And recently, after Herschell Gordon Lewis, he passed away in 2016. The Times wrote a giant article about him, and Joe Bob Briggs went on a tirade about why couldn't you write about him when he was alive? He really needed your help. You could have at least said something. And we'll get into why that is here in just a second.
Looking at all of his films, I haven't heard of any of these.
Here's the thing. He would make a movie, and then Hollywood would make a movie right after it that would be big.
Huh.
And it would be like a copy of his film. He was born in Pittsburgh in 1926. His father died when he was 6 years old, and his mother never remarried. Lewis's family then moved to Chicago, where he spent the majority of his adolescence. After graduating from high school, Lewis received bachelor's and master's degrees in journalism at Northwestern University in nearby Evanstown, Illinois. A few years later, he briefly taught communications at Mississippi State University, where he was lured from his academic career to become the manager of WRAC Radio in Racine, Wisconsin, and later to become a studio director at WKY-TV KFOR-TV studio in Oklahoma City. In 1953, Lewis began working for a friend's advertising agency in Chicago while teaching graduate advertising courses at night at Roosevelt University. Lewis later he began directing TV commercials, advertisements for a small production company called Alexander and Associates, which he later bought out half of the company with business associates Martin Schmidhofer and renamed it Lewis and Martin Films. Lewis directed a short promotional film entitled Carving Magic, sponsored by Swift Company. Along with Swift Company's home economist, Martha Logan, the short starred William Kerwin and Harvey Korman, who would later go on to star in other Lewis projects. So he worked with Harvey Korman quite a bit early on, way before Carol Burnett. Lewis served as producer of his first film venture, The Prime Time, which was the first feature film produced in Chicago since the late 1910s. He would assume directorial duties on nearly all of his films from then on. His first in a lengthy series of collaborations with exploitation producer David F. Friedman, Living Venus, was a fictitious account based on the story of Hugh Hefner and the beginnings of Playboy. Lewis and Friedman's movies were early exploitation films, and the film's nude scenes, although softcore, were not seen in mainstream Hollywood pictures because of the censorship imposed by the MPPC code. So one of the things we're going to talk about is one of these films. It is very hard to find. You can occasionally find some of it. Not on YouTube. You kind of have to go out and look. But it's The Adventures of Lucky Pierre. So how this boils down is you couldn't have nudity in regular movies, even grindhouse movies back in the 50s and early 60s. If there was any sort of mentioning of sex or any sort of sex, right? You just couldn't have it, right? You couldn't be simulated or any of that. There was a loophole that they figured out in the 50s, is that you could show nudity if they were just doing stuff, just regular stuff, like playing volleyball. So they had these things called nudies. And what it was basically they would go out to a nudist camp and film these naked people playing volleyball or going about their business, shopping, and that's how they got around the salaciousness, because there was nothing salacious about it. They just didn't have any clothes on. Well, Herschell Gordon Lewis got the idea of a nudie cutie, which is there was a storyline, and this is the Adventures of Lucky Pierre in 1961. That you could still show that, have a storyline, right, and still show the nudity, but it couldn't be salacious at all. It had to be innocent. It's just they didn't have any clothes on. So he made The Adventures of Lucky Pierre on a shoestring budget of $7,500. And it would become the duo's first great financial success. It made 3 times its budget upon its release. Because film restrictions had not yet allowed for sexual depictions in film, the bulk of Lewis and Friedman's early work consisted of nudist camp features like Daughters of the Sun, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Bares. But by the mid 60s, they'd started doing the ratings. So people stopped going to see their nudie cutie films because they actually wanted to see something with some storyline to it that wasn't um, a guy falling down and reaching out to grab, and he pulls a bra down and boobs, even though later on that got used in films in the 70s and the 80s. That's all the Adventures of Lucky Pierre is. Again, it's really hard to find. There are some stuff I do have in our YouTube playlist, not any scenes from it, but an explanation from Joe Bob Briggs from the 80s where he explains what it is, and it's brilliant. So Lewis and Friedman entered into uncharted territory in 1963 with their seminal Blood Feast. It is considered by most critics to be the first gore film. Because of the unprecedented nature of this type of film, they were able to cater to the drive-in theaters that would have been accessible with the prior skin flicks. The next one they did was 2000 Maniacs and Color Me Blood Red. They went on to do Taste of Blood, which is often referred to as the Gone with the Wind of Gore, and the Gruesome Tusif. He then ventured into juvenile delinquency films just for the hell of it, and the wife-swapping Suburban Roulette, and the corruption of music industry with the Blast-Off Girls. And things like Jimmy the Boy Wonder. He also did some. He purchased the rights to unfinished films and completed them himself, retitling the film Monster A Go-Go, which got really good. Like The Wizard of Gore. Just trying to go through. There's a lot of notes here. So let's talk about the nudie cutie, since we're at that point in his life. The Adventures of Lucky Pierre is a 1961 nudie cutie created by Herschell Gordon Lewis and David Friedman. The film stars comedian Billy Falvo. It was unique for its time and genre, adding successful comedy to the nudity and sensationalist market. Again, they made the film for $7,500, mostly consisting of film stock. But they wanted it. They wanted a little bit more story in their nudist film, so that they kind of created this genre. It's a series of vignettes featuring the title character Lucky Pierre in a series of unrelated storylines involving scantily clad or nude women. Pierre's named after a childhood rhyme Friedman and Lewis remembered would end up in a short segment where he encountered various naked women. For instance, in Drive-In Me Crazy, Pierre attends a drive-in movie where the ticket taker and concession workers are all nude women. I think the idea is they weren't actually nude in the film itself. I have seen this. They weren't actually nude. It was all in Pierre's imagination. It's just how it was explained later on. It's not really clear when you watch it, though. The next film I want to talk about is 2000 Maniacs. It is a 1964 American horror film written and directed by Herschell Gordon Lewis and stars 1963's Playboy playmate Connie Mason. It follows a group of northern tourists who are savagely tortured and murdered during a Confederate celebration in a small southern community centennial. The film has been noted by critics as an early example of Hicksploitation, as well for its sensationalizing of national perceptions between the North and the South. The film was remade in 2005 as 2001 Maniacs. The story in the film was inspired by the 1947 Lerner and Loewe musical Brigadoon. In 1965, Two rednecks named Rufus and Lester use detour signs to lure 6 young tourists into their rural town of Pleasant Valley, Georgia. Upon their arrival, they are warmly welcomed by the townsfolk and are introduced to some of them, including Rufus, Lester, and town mayor Earl Buckman. The tourists are invited to be guests of honor for the centennial celebration being held over the weekend. They provide them hotel rooms and food and entertainment throughout the celebration, and so the visitors decide to go along with it. The 2000 Maniacs was filmed in 15 days early in 1964 in the town of St. Cloud, Florida. According to a contemporary report, the entire town participated in the film. It was a film debut of non-professional Illinois stage actor named Talcus Blank, nicknamed Talkie his entire life, who played Pleasant Valley Mayor Buckman. He used the pseudonym Jeffrey Allen in all of his film appearances because he was never a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Lewis was so impressed by Blank's ability to perfectly mimic any type of Southern accent that he hired Blank to appear in many of his later films, among them Moonshine Mountain, The Stuff Kill Y'all, and Year of the Yahoo. The film's budget was considerably larger than any that they've done before. However, 2000 Maniacs was heavily cut by the MPAA before its release, which resulted in the film being scantily screened across the country. The film mostly played at drive-in theaters, especially in the southern United States. Among its earliest releases was on October 1st, 1964 in Denver, Colorado. An all-time great became because of all the sadism. Enthusiast, cramp singer, and horror movie aficionado Lux Interior, also known as Eric Herkheiser. The people act in the movie actually live in the town where it's filmed. They look very inbred. There's a wonderful scene where they take this sexy girl and drop this 2,000-pound rock on her from 20 feet, and the whole town's out there watching. Old ladies are looking like, what are we doing here? The 1980s alternative rock band 10,000 Maniacs took their name in homage to the film as a way of making them stand out from other bands of the college rock scene. The John Waters film Multiple Maniacs is named in homage of the film as well. So yeah, there's this great gore fest film. I do have some scenes from it in our YouTube playlist. It is, for lack of a better term, a great drive-in movie. And it predates like Arthur Hill made a film very similar to it, like 15 years later, called Southern Comfort. Plus a lot of the other exploitation films, like, well, let's be honest, Smoking the Bandit is a exploitation film. So is Gator,
Yeah.
Gator Bait, all of this.
Yeah.
It kicked off a lot of this genre. Have you? I'm assuming you've never seen 2000 Maniacs.
I've seen 0 of the movies in his list.
Here's the thing: you have seen them. They were just called something else and done by somebody else. Because in some cases, they're exact copies of his movies, just with a bigger budget and more professional actors.
Well, and you'd have to give me examples of that, of movies that were made, that were copies. I'd have to know those. None of these from the name do I know.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the Lucky Pierre, it's a nudie cutie. It's a piece of Americana and art at this point. It's not really a movie. It's an excuse to show naked girls. But he got away from that, and when he did, he made these movies that, again, at the time nobody wanted to see him, but then you come out, a few years later, and it's like, oh wow. Blast Off Girls is a 1967 American exploitation film directed by Herschell Gordon Lewis. Here's another one. It stars Dan Conway, Ray Sager, Tom Tyrell, Ron Leas, and Dennis Hickey. Bougie Baker is a ruthless, greedy talent manager who discovers and then exploits unknown rock bands. The film opens at a nightclub with one of Bougie Baker's protege acts, a band named Charlie, who have clearly been put through the grind already. They begin griping about the royalties they've been fleeced out of and then walk out on it. Undaunted, Bougie and his loyal but dim-witted assistant Gordy walk into a local bar for some cheap drinks, and they discover a new band performing, played by real-life Chicago garage band, The Faded Blue. Promising them a recording contract and ensuring fame, Bougie renames the five man group the Big Blast, outfit them in designer suits and sets about to prime them for stardom. This is done by utilizing a bevy of attractive and loose women to seduce recording engineers, photographing him in the heat of the moment, then blackmailing him to let them do their thing. The film ends with a zany MOS montage of the band running around various Chicago and Cleveland landmarks, which was inspired by the comic stylings of Richard Lester's film, The Beatles. Live footage is from different clubs. One was the now famous Agora Alpha in Little Italy, Cleveland. Most notably in Blast Off Girls is a cameo appearance from real-life KFC founder Colonel Harlan Sanders. Lewis was able to enlist Sanders for the film through his connections in the advertising firm. The scene was shot in a single day at the local Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio. Sanders was kind of a butt about the whole thing. But the band is incredible. And I had to have some scenes of the band playing. This film got made 30 years later. That Thing You Do. Yeah, Blast Off Girls is That Thing You Do. If you've ever seen That Thing You Do, you've seen Blast Off Girls.
The Tom Hanks movie?
Yeah, except he doesn't use girls to take pictures with the engineer. But all the other stuff where they're putting them through the grind and they're starting to become kind of moderately famous. That's all in there. This one's great. A lot of great music. A lot of great garage rock. Kingsman. I've got a scene of them rehearsing and then eventually playing a tune in our YouTube playlist. You should really check that out. It's really good. But again, he got a local Chicago band, Faded Blue, and they were garage bands. So like the Kingsmen or trying to think of other garage bands off the top of my head. Eventually, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, they started out as a garage band. That kind of sound. Sorry. A very large frog in my throat. But yeah, this is one that kind of kicked off that. Another one would be like Cotton Candy was another exploitation film that was made about the same idea of the Blast Off Girls. The next one is Suburban Roulette. It is a 1968 American drama film directed by Herschell Gordon Lewis and stars William Kerwin and Allison Louise Down as characters who are involved in a wife swapping to overcome the boredom of living in the suburbs. It was produced as an independent film by Lewis and was shown in Chicago area movie theaters during the summer of 1968. It contains implied sex, boozing, adult themes, fighting, but is without nudity, which would have prohibited mainstream movie theater distribution. It was filmed in Wooddale, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, during the summer of 1967. The Fisher family, which makes up Bert and Eileen Fisher and their 13-year-old daughter Cindy, move into the seemingly perfect neighborhood to get away from the nearby city of Chicago. Private marital troubles between the Fishers include Bert's drinking problem and Eileen's propensity for older men. On the first day living in suburbia, they meet the neighbors Ron and Margot Elston, who invite them to a pool party at the Elston's house. Bert and Eileen have cocktails, partake in a cookout, and flirting with each other's mates, but not without guilt and repercussions. The Fishers fall into a dangerous game of wife swapping until the unwilling Bert can't take it anymore, ignoring the presence of other guests, including Ron's wife, Margot. Eileen succumbs to the advances of Ron and has sex with him in a bedroom. And they're going through the weeks following all of this stuff. It's about depression and life in suburbia, and it was mostly done by local actors and actresses. What's amazing about this film is it was this little bitty tiny movie in 1968. In 1969, the major studios released Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which is almost a carbon copy of the film made a year earlier by Herschell Gordon Lewis. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice did have nudity. It starred Natalie Wood, Robert Culp, Elliot Gould, and Diane Cannon. and it was basically about the whole two suburban couples that end up doing wife swapping and stuff, and it was a little more tongue in cheek than the Herschell Gordon Lewis film, which was very serious. But it's it kind of they ripped on his idea. So he's kind of pioneering these ideas that we end up going with later on. Let's see, what else did I need to talk about? Lucky Pierre, 2000 Maniacs, Blast Off Girls, and Suburban Roulette. Yeah. And he also wrote books about collectible plates. He was really big in the collectible plates. I don't want to say market universe. He and his wife wrote several books. His wife helped him produce all these films. A lot of people think he's salacious and stuff, but honestly, a lot of the stuff that he was doing gets done by everybody else later on, with the exception of the nudie cuties. Although one could argue that the falling down and grabbing the bra and pulling it, or the swimsuit and pulling it off the girl, gets used a lot in the 80s. But he also did a bunch of gore stuff as well. Splatter, Lucio Fulci took a lot of cues from him, as did David Cronenberg, and you'll see a lot of his stuff pop up throughout the film world because, yes, he was schlocky, he was independent, he was out of Chicago. Tobe Hooper was out of Austin. Oh my God, not Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Walking Dead.
Uh-huh.
The Walking Dead. Night of the Living Dead.
Uh-huh.
Cannot remember that director's name. George A. Romero was out of Pittsburgh. Herschell Gordon Lewis was working out of Chicago and doing all of this stuff as well. Because he was a producer, he's not really seen as a director, even though he directed everything he ever did. And he's a treasure in American film, even though his stuff isn't quite as polished as everybody else's. It's not as polished as Night of the Living Dead. It's not as polished as it's about the same polish as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2000 Maniacs. But it's well shot. It's well written too, strangely enough. The acting in some cases is really good. In some cases not, but he was using locals. And he would spend half the year in Florida, half the year in Chicago. So he'd do something serious in Chicago and he'd do something kind of crazy in Florida. And he made a couple movies a year. But that's how you get 2000 Maniacs and Suburban Roulette, within a couple of years of each other, because he was making them in both places. He ended up retiring to Florida with his wife. They couldn't take the Chicago winters anymore. But yeah, he's just this amazing character in film who finally, after his death, got recognized. But as Joe Bob Briggs explains later on, why couldn't you guys have written an article about him when he was alive? Herschell Gordon Lewis is not this amazing auteur. He just had some good ideas. He sold pictures. That's what he did. But in some cases, the pictures that he sold were amazing. Suburban Roulette being one of them. I think Suburban Roulette is better than Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice won an Oscar for cinematography and I think music as well. Quincy Jones's music. It's way more polished than Suburban Roulette. It's funnier. And I would say actually more salacious because there's actually nudity in it, whereas in Suburban Roulette, there isn't any. Carnal Knowledge was another one that was real big. Basically a remake of Suburban Roulette as well.
Carnal Knowledge, the one with
Art Garfunkel?
I'm thinking of an entirely
Jack Nicholson?
different movie.
Art Garfunkel?
No, I'm thinking of an entirely different movie.
Yeah, about two couples who basically enter into a sexual, I won't say triad, but it's a quadrad. But yeah, that's basically
What's the movie? What's the movie I'm thinking of with Andrew Dice Clay and Victoria Jackson and is
Brain
that not
Smasher.
Is that not? No, 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 no. It was a romantic comedy. Uh,
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Hold on, let me
hold
flip it.
on,
Give me
hold
a
on. I'm
second.
looking.
I got you. I got you. Got you.
Victoria Jackson. That's what I was thinking when casual sex.
Casual Sex.
Yeah, actually, pretty good movie.
Yeah, Casual Sex is really good.
Yeah. So sorry, you said Carl Knowledge and
Yeah,
made me
Leah
think of that
Thompson,
movie.
Victoria Jackson, Andrew Dash Clay,
Yeah.
Jerry Levine, and Mary Grace.
Yeah.
Mary Grace was great in that.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
love her.
sorry.
No,
bygone.
no, it's good. But yeah. He's one of those guys you should get out there and see. A lot of his stuff is on like Tubi. You're gonna have to look for The Adventures of Lucky Pierre. It's not easy to find. I think when I saw it was like 30 years ago. Someone had a videotape. Blast Off Girls is usually pretty easy to find. 2000 Maniacs, you can go out and find it. Suburban Roulette, a little less, even though there's actually no nudity in it. It's all implied. Like, scantily clad is about as far as they get. You know, you might get a shoulder, or someone's walking away as they're getting undressed and they, walk into the darkness. It's actually pretty well shot. It could be a little lighter. There's a lot of dark in it, but I think that's what he was trying to go for. But again, get out there, watch our YouTube playlist. I don't have any of the full movies on there. They're just scenes. I could probably go out and find them if anybody wants them. But it's great. And the opening with Joe Bob Briggs talking about the sleaziest movie in the history of film. He's talking about Herschell Gordon Lewis. And yeah, it's tongue in cheek, but he also pays homage to him because he thought he was really great. And it ends with Herschell Gordon Lewis giving an interview on the new Blood Feast. Because someone was producing a new version of it, and you actually get to see the man himself very shortly before he passed away. I want to say months, just a few months before he passed away. But he's a real down to earth guy. He's just making movies, having a good time. And collecting collectible plates, which was also his thing. He wrote a couple books on it. Him and his wife wrote a couple books on it. She also helped him in the production, but she kind of wants to remain unknown. You know what I mean? She wants to be in the background, which is great. I'd kind of like to know more about her, but that wasn't her deal. She liked being part of the party, but she didn't want to host it, basically. Except for the plate books, which she was all into. But yeah, that's about it for Herschell Gordon Lewis, other than get out and check out his stuff. The Blast Offs, great music. Suburban Roulette, in my opinion, is better than Bob and Carol and Frank and Alice. And or I get that wrong every time. But yeah.
No, that's interesting. I had never heard of him. I've never heard of any of these movies. So I'd really like to find a list, if you could, of the movies that were copies, because I'm very curious about that. I tried looking online while you were talking and couldn't find anything.
That thing for Blast Off Girls, that thing you do.
Right. You said
Cotton
that.
Candy was a kind of an underground film, but it was also pretty big. It used to play a lot. Suburban Roulette was Bob and Ted and Frank and Alice and Carnal Knowledge. 2000 Maniacs, Hicksploitation, Gorefest, going into a small northern people going into a small town, and the small town is crazy, where they sacrifice people.
Deliverance.
Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of thing. Or Southern Comfort. Great film. If you've never seen it, Walter Hill film. Love the cast. He made it between 48 Hours and what's another one of his big movies? We talked about Southern Comfort at one point a couple of years ago. But
All right.
yeah,
Well, go out and check those out. See what you think about them. As I was doing my Google searches there, it did say that he's considered the godfather of gore. So if you're into that and you want to see stuff like that, then give Herschell Gordon Lewis a shot. So, all right. Well, with that, then we'll go to the murdery side of the house.
murder.
Speaking of gore, actually, this one isn't gory. Um, for today, I got my information off The Guardian, Wikipedia, and Medium, and I am going to murder names throughout this and places. This takes place in North Macedonia, so the names are going to be very difficult for me.
Ooh, yeah, the Macedonia. It's gonna be a little Greek and a little
Right.
Slavic. Ooh.
Yeah. But this is the story of Vlado Taneski.
Vlado Taneski.
Yeah. So it takes place in the small mountainous town of Isivo, North Macedonia.
I'm sorry.
Isivo?
Isivo. Okay. Isivo.
I don't know.
Okay.
Kicevo, and there's a little
Exit mark.
something over the sea. So I don't know. Here in this town, it was nestled at the base of a towering range of mountains, and life moved at a very quiet, unhurried pace. The kind of place where news was sparse, neighbors were family. But on May 7th, 2008, the town's stillness was shattered by a tragedy that would expose the darkness lurking far closer to home than anyone could have imagined, and it began with a mother's worst nightmare. That evening, 65-year-old Zivana Temelkovskos Zivana was enjoying a rare day off from her job as a house cleaner. She was busy in her modest kitchen. The windows were open to let in the soft spring air, and she was waiting for her adult son, Zoran, to arrive for dinner. So she went about preparing the food, but then the shrill ring of the telephone cut through her calm. When Zivana picked up, she heard the strained voice of a friend that something was wrong. Her friend was asking her urgently if she had been listening to the news, if she had had the radio or television on, and Zivana, who was very puzzled, said no. The friend relayed devastating news. There had been a terrible traffic accident in town, and Zoran was reportedly involved. So, without hesitation, Zivana dropped what she was holding and ran from her apartment. Her neighbor was standing outside and saw her bolt out the door and called after her, "Is everything okay?" And Zivana cried over her shoulder, "My son's hurt. I'm going to the hospital." And she disappeared around the corner running. She didn't own a car. So she ran all the way to the hospital on foot. Moments later, a knock came at the neighbor's door, and opening it, they found themselves looking at Zoran, completely unharmed, bewildered, and asking if they had seen his mother. Zoran explained that he and Zivana had planned to eat together that evening, and it was really unlike her to leave without leaving a word. The neighbor then asked if he had been in an accident, and Zoran stared at her confused because he hadn't. So his concern started growing, and Zoran called the local hospital, but they had no record of Zivana ever arriving. And strangely, there were no victims from a major traffic accident that had been admitted at all that day. Nightfall came. Zivana still hadn't returned, so Zoran contacted the police to tell them his mother was missing. 9 agonizing days later, on May 16th, police located Zivana's body. Vlado Taneski, who was a seasoned crime reporter who didn't live far from Zivana's house or apartment, received the tip before the news was public. A police source confided that Zivana had been found dead, her body beaten, strangled, and stabbed. She was wrapped tightly in plastic. She had been dumped in an illegal garbage site near the town's football stadium. Interestingly, her valuables, jewelry, and money were still with her, so this was not a robbery gone wrong. Investigators couldn't find any reason why Savannah, who was just a humble cleaning lady with no known enemies, would be the target of such a brutal attack. The case made no sense to them, but Vlado Taneski's instincts, which were honed over decades of reporting on corruption and crime, told him there was more to the story and something was deeply off. Vlado had spent 30 years exposing corruption and challenging authorities, and he knew the risks of digging into these murky waters.
What year was this?
This was in 2008.
And he'd been doing it for 30 years. Yeah, he was reporting on late 80s, early 90s communist Yugoslavia.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
He knows all about corruption.
Well, and he had faced threats before, but even though that, he grabbed his notebook and went out his front door and walked the short distance to Savannah's apartment. Zoran welcomed him inside and offered him coffee. Zoran recounted everything, how he had returned home to find his mother missing, how the neighbor had seen her run away after the phone call, and how he immediately called the hospital only to find no record of any accident victims. As Zoran spoke, Vlado took notes, pressing for every detail, and when Zoran mentioned that his mother had been a cleaning lady, Vlado's mind raced back to two unsolved cases. In 2005, 64-year-old Mitra Simjanovska, there we go, had been murdered. She disappeared.
Sounds good to me.
Sure. She disappeared November 16th, 2004, after a trip to the market, and she was found January 12th, 2005. She had been strangled, bound, tortured, and raped, and had been dead for less than 2 weeks. In 2007, 56-year-old Lubika Lukoska had met a similar fate. She disappeared in early November 2007 after going to buy groceries, and she was found on February 3rd, 2008. So months went by before she was found. She also had been strangled, bound, beaten, and raped, and had been dead for only a few days. Both were poor older women who worked as cleaning ladies, and just like Savannah, both had been violently killed. On May 19th, which was only 3 days after Savannah's body was found, Vlado published a bombshell article in the local newspaper called "A Serial Killer Stalks Kosovo." His piece didn't just connect the three murders, it openly lambasted police for their mishandling of the previous cases. In at least one instance, someone had been wrongly arrested, which was a miscarriage of justice that allowed the real killer to strike again. The article angered the authorities, but within their anger, there was the uncomfortable realization that Vlado had uncovered details they had missed. So reluctantly, police reclassified the murders as a work of a serial killer and launched a full-scale investigation. Meanwhile, Vlado had noticed a change in the town. Wherever he went, he felt the eyes of police officers following him. Standing across the street, parked and idling cars, they were always watching him. He assumed it was retaliation for embarrassing the department, but the truth was going to be far more chilling. By early June, detectives had narrowed their pool of suspects from hundreds to just 3 individuals. They believed they were close to making an arrest. Vlado was undeterred and continued his reporting, even as police surveillance shadowed his every move.
Oh, they think he's the killer.
Well, on June 20th, Vlado's editor received a strange phone call from a police officer, and they said that an arrest was imminent. Curiously, they didn't call Vlado directly. The editor tried phoning Vlado immediately, but there was no answer. He called again and nothing. He said this was unusual because Vlado always answered. The editor thought at that point that maybe Vlado was already on the scene, preparing to capture the arrest in real time. And on a quiet tree-lined street in Kosovo, police swarmed a modest, overgrown 2-story house. They surrounded the building, guns drawn, and shouted for the occupant to surrender. Moments later, the door creaked open. There was a disheveled, confused-looking man who stepped onto the porch. He was immediately handcuffed and led away. As soon after was when the editor's phone rang again. The voice on the other end delivered the name of the arrested suspect, and of course, you guessed it, they said the killer was Vlado Taneski. Vlado was arrested on June 20th, 2008, after his DNA was matched to semen found on the victims. All three. Examination of the Taneski family's rural cottage uncovered a cache of pornographic materials, ropes, and cords matching those used to tie the victims, and items belonging to the victims.
Why was he trying to investigate it if he was doing it?
So this is one of those that he was. They think he was trying to throw the investigation other directions and away from him.
So he wasn't grassed up.
No, he was not grassed up. We're
Okay.
getting there right now.
Okay.
Vlado had been a respected journalist. He was professional, calm, and relentless in his pursuit of truth. But inside, he was a cauldron of rage and resentment, which was particularly directed at his own mother, whom he described as cruel and abusive. After she died in 2002, his anger increased, and he became obsessed with revenge. Revenge not only against her, but against women who resembled her, or older cleaning ladies, just like his mother. All three victims had personally known his mother. And
that's how come the call came from someone she knew.
Yep. He used their shared history to gain their trust and then lured them away to brutal, violent deaths. In Savannah's case, Vlado orchestrated this vulnerability by calling a local radio station where he had once worked and planted a false report about Savannah's car accident. The station trusted him without verifying it and broadcast the story, which was what sent her into the panic rush to the hospital, straight into Vlado's trap.
Okay, so he didn't call her as a friend, as one of the friends. He put a fake story in the radio station so a regular friend would call her. That's brilliant. Evil, but kind of smart.
After he killed Savannah, he returned to his role as the trusted journalist and covered her disappearance and death. His investigative article had actually been riddled with lies carefully crafted to mislead police. He even invented a supposed witness who had seen Savannah getting into a car with two men, but his arrogance would be what betrayed him. Buried in his writing were details that only the killer could have known, specifics about the use of telephone cords to strangle the victims, which was information that had never been released to the public. He reported that the cord had been used to strangle as well as tie up the bodies of the women. And even more brazenly, he speculated about the chronology of the murders, and that was the detail that sealed his fate. After his arrest, Vlado was charged with two of the three murders, and a third charge pending. Investigators suspected at that point there might also be a fourth victim. Details of the case were printed on June 21st, and police were planning to question Taneski on the May 30th, 2003 disappearance of the 73-year-old retired cleaner Gorica Pavleski. But before he could stand trial on June 23rd, Vlado was found dead inside of his jail cell. Check this out. The cause, drowning. Somehow, in a cell with three other inmates, Vlado had managed to drown himself in a small bucket of water without anybody noticing.
He was in there with some other dudes?
Yeah, three other dudes. Yeah.
He was in there with three other dudes. I bet one of them had a mom who was a cleaning lady.
Could be. Officially, his death was ruled a suicide, but the circumstances just really deepened the town's sense of betrayal and unease. With his death, the murder investigations were closed, and Kisevo was left to reckon with the staggering truth. The man who had promised to uncover the darkness had been the darkness all along.
Ugh.
And that is the story of Vlado Taneski.
Vlado Taneski.
I thought that was an interesting story. I mean,
yeah.
So I don't believe I've covered this case. There's another one I know out there, and I need to look at it, of a journalist who was actually, to my recollection, he was traveling over to the U.S. I want to say from Europe, somewhere in Europe, maybe Italy. But anyway, he was traveling back and forth from the U.S. to his home over in Europe, and was writing articles about true crime, and yet he was the culprit. Yeah, I remember that. I have to look it up. It's one I've read before, and I need to cover. But yeah, he apparently committed. He was a serial killer and covered it in his own articles. Yeah. So anyway, that's my story for this week.
Well, thank you, sir. That was fascinating. Because my first thought was, why are the cops trying to grass this dude up? They weren't. They knew it was him.
Yeah, that's why they were following him. They had a suspicion it was him the whole
I
time.
was like, how did he know about that?
Yeah. So that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find our website, nerderyandmurdery.com. That's more information about us. You can find information to this episode, links, pictures, and you can also find the link to our YouTube page, which Zig has talked about and so often updates.
Yes. Please go out and check that playlist for this. If nothing else, the explanation by Joe Bob Briggs from back in the 80s about Herschell Gordon Lewis is worth the price of admission. It's like 7-8 minutes long, and it's just hysterical.
Awesome. Appreciate all the work you do on that.
Sure.
You can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. That, along with our Patreon, the link to our Patreon is on our account. If you wish to become a patron and donate to the costs that are associated with this show, that, along with the merchandise, go along to keep us on the air, keep our uploads going, keep our storage, and everything that goes into bringing this show for your entertainment week in and week out. We do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information we talk about, and it is completely free to you and something you can do to help us there. And last but not least, before I forget, Chuck, you can now go to sleep.
Good night, Chuck. Good night, Cookie.
With that,
I've been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.
Static crackles, dreams stay. Nerdery and murdery fade. Voices in the wire. Two dudes light the fire. Obsession and confession. Games in death procession. Through the microphone they speak. Dark secrets geek seek. Nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill, the mind fills. Techie talk, ghostly howl. Keepem's graveyard prowl. England thoughts collide. Fascination can't hide. Retro vibes, ancient lore. Never know what's in store. Or you'll find adventure, bird each episode a twist.